We don't have a whole lot of time, but we'll try to entertain as many as we can. Mr. Eggleston and then ma'am in the front.
Did you use Case Closed in some of your research?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What a great book.
This is the Vincent Bugliosi?
No, this is Gerald Posner.
Oh, Gerald Posner's book, pardon me.
The Posner book came out about the time that the Oliver Stone movie JFK came out.
Yep.
I get that Oliver Stone is a provocateur, but that movie has not one shred of evidence or anything. Yeah. But again, I think this is going to be something that people are always going to contest. And I think it'd be a foolhardy endeavor to say, we're going to tell the definitive thing. This is what really happened. I think I'm getting a lot of Facebook stuff where people are like trying to tell me that, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, well, wait till we do this thing.
Right.
And
judge it afterwards.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, we really want to just dramatize stuff that most of the people don't know. Another great story about that, Abraham Zapruder. He didn't even take the camera. Abraham Zapruder, I'm sure you all know the Zapruder film. It's the 20 seconds of Super 8 footage that shows Kennedy being assassinated. It's one of the most graphic and disturbing things you could ever watch. He didn't even take the camera to work that day. It was he got down, he lived in the suburbs, he was a Ukrainian immigrant. He had found a great livelihood in Dallas for himself and his family. He had 2 floors of the Dow Tex building. He had all these gals working at sewing machines, doing some kind of a wholesale clothing thing. And he went down, and his secretary said, "Mr. Z, you said you were going to bring your camera to shoot home movies of the president." And he goes, "Well, I'm not going to get a good shot. I'm too short, and God, it looks like it's going to rain." She goes, "You get in your car. I'm calling your wife." And he did. Drove back out, got the camera.
So, but for that, there wouldn't have been.
But for that, there wouldn't be. So there's things like that. To me, it's always been a great human interest story. It's a kind of story. You see, what people can't reconcile is here's the leader of the free world. It's what William Manchester's son. William Manchester wrote one of the definitive books about the assassination at the time. It was called Death of a President. It's a marvelous book. And his son was interviewed for a cover story because he was hired by the Kennedys to write the book. And when he wrote the book, the Kennedys didn't like the book. And he practically killed himself writing this book.
Yeah.
He really did. And so his son years later saying it just about killed my dad writing that book. And he said, but my dad always said, you take Kennedy and you put him on one scale, the leader of the free world. And then you put Oswald on the other scale, basically a nobody. I mean, he was somebody. He wasn't a cipher. He wasn't an automaton. But he was just, a malcontent, really. And a guy who was very screwed up from an early age, and it just doesn't balance. You have to add weight to Oswald. You can't. How can? When we've got these, there have been a lot of documents have been declassified. One thing is all the White House telephone conversations, and the next day, Hoover calls up Johnson and says, "Mr. President," and came down to the president's life was only worth $20, and Johnson's like, What do you mean? He said, well, sir, that's what it costs for the rifle and the ammunition. Oswald almost, he didn't even have really much time to put together a plan. The clip wasn't full. He was really, it was almost, I think, because it wasn't too worked out. I mean, his whole escape was so haphazard. I don't think he really even, I always wondered why he didn't take the shot from the front, though. But I've talked to some sharpshooters, and they say it's easier to hit a target that's receding. And he got a little excited. That first shot went wild.
Well, you understand, though, that what will happen when this comes out is you will then become a target yourself. You will get all the conspiracy theorists will be all over you.
That's something I don't really want. I think we're just going to add this to a huge dialogue. There's a whole cottage industry around the thing.
But you know that the likely consequence of this is they're going to say, "Oh, Paxton, he's."
Well, we're just going to dramatize aspects of the thing that are based in fact.
Right.
Now, people criticize the Warren Report. It's actually a pretty amazing document. Most people haven't took the time to look. It's very detailed. But to me, all the inaccuracies that I've found, and there were many. I mean, Hoover basically called the guys down in Dallas and said, "Wait a minute, you're telling me that the guy that we've got arrested who shot the president, you're telling me he came into the FBI office 10 days ago threatening and left a threatening letter, that letter's got to disappear. James P. Hostie's another character. He was the FBI guy who had the file. The file arrived back from New Orleans that morning because, you see, a person of interest like Oswald, he'd been a Russian, you know, he was a defector. He'd come back from Russia. They kept they kept tabs on him. But by the time they realized he'd gone down to New Orleans, you know, when he got arrested down there, then the file didn't come back. They didn't know he had come back to Fort Worth. He was out there. He was kind of tracking it down, but it was too bad. So there was gross negligence. This was one of the most embarrassing days for not only the FBI, but probably the Secret Service and the Dallas Police Department.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
It's great. It's great.
All these years later, and again, 50 years coming up, ma'am, and then right there, and then we'll go back.
Well, I had a question about polygamy, but I just wanted to tell you that I was at NYU and Stella Adler also, probably about the same time you were.
Oh my gosh!
We'll have to talk about that. But I did some research went to this polygamous compound where they lived in caves up in Utah.
Wow.
And they all knew who you were, and they loved that show.
Isn't that great? You're the icon of the cave-dwelling polygamists. They should give you a medal for that, actually.
Gosh.
So my question is, do you have a lot of contact with people from that?
I have many cave-dwelling friends. No, it's like we call them spelunkers where I come from.
Yeah.
No, not really. I'm kind of a Luddite in many ways. I don't tweet, or I don't really even go on Facebook much.
But surely you have people come up to you as a result of the show and want to talk, you know, stuff.
Not as much as you
really?
think, you know. I think maybe it's a guilty pleasure, because if you think about the show, we really play these characters without judgment, and we play them in earnest. And you know, how many shows actually take on a character who really is trying to be righteous and trying to be religious and faithful to...
And without mocking.
Without mocking, or, you know, we all are so quick to, you know, we think we're so damn clever. And most networks, even HBO, they don't want to touch something like that. And my father taught me, because whenever you're at a dinner party, there are three things you don't want to talk about: sex, politics, and religion.
Well, you hit the trifecta, right?
Yeah. So here's a show that hits all of those, and I've been amazed, and the characters all have such integrity, and I admire Bill Henriksen. He's 3 times the man I am.
That is a line you've used before.
I haven't. I just came up with that.
All right. So right here.
Looking back at all the different characters you've played in your acting career, is there one that comes to mind that you feel sort of reflects your own true being more than any others you've played?
Wow.
This would be the Club Dread answer, right?
Yes. Oh, I don't know. I think they're all aspects of my kind of bizarre personality, but I like playing guys in leadership positions. You know, but I relate to these characters in different ways. Even though Simple Plan is a real tragedy, I could really relate to that guy, and kind of my experience in growing up in Aledo, Texas, from when I was in high school, a little town, and to play this guy who works at the grain elevator, and he's kind of local guy and stuff. I could really relate to that. But
that's a great movie too.
That is a great movie. That's a great movie.
I mean, quickly, we have time for 2 more, sir, and then sir. Make that the last 2.
After enduring the Academy Awards last night.
Ha! You can say that again.
Right.
After enduring the Academy Awards.
How long was that show?
And watching this shot of James DeFranco looking like he's waiting to win a car or something. God bless him.
Well, they've turned it into Survivor, where they go, each actor, and they give them the big send-off, and then one of them ain't going to hit the stage. Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. You set me up for this. I'm kind of old school on this, but
I am too.
It might be a bit of a softball question for you, but I actually remember the days when George C. Scott did Climb, the Academy Award.
That's a great story.
I remember when Marlon Brando sent
Sashi Littlefeather.
And then when Woody Allen, back when he was cool, didn't even go. You know, do you do you think there's anything to be said for, as a philosophical question, the whole idea of not competing?
You know, I think that's a good question, and it actually kind of, it speaks to a broader issue about society nowadays. You know, and it's not just for people who are public figures or actors or whatever they might be in the public eye, but it's a question of dignity and propriety, and we give so much away, and we want to tell everybody what we're eating and what we're doing, and it's scary to me. People are giving away their privacy, and just I hate the way they do that thing now where the guy who won the Oscar last year has to say something about each actor, and God, I would feel kind of embarrassed. It's kind of like when you're introducing me and talking about my credits. I mean, what do I look like? Like I start smiling like I'm about to win a car? Or, it's just like, yeah, these are experiences I had, It's just movies, it's storytelling. It's not going to cure cancer or anything. But look, George C. Scott, I got to address that. George C. Scott won for Patton, and he didn't show up. And they asked him, they said, well, why didn't you go? And he said, well, I had a previous engagement. They said, well, do you mind us asking what that was? He goes, yes, I had planned to watch hockey that night on television.
That would have been a good choice last night.
I'm not putting it down, and I can see why they're scrambling. You have to understand that these shows, they make their whole budget for the year off these broadcasts, whether it's the Golden Globes or the SAG Awards, there's so many awards now. It's crazy. And how do you compare? Like, it's apples and oranges. There were some great performances. I would love to produce that show myself.
Be a little different.
It would be a little different. Yeah. But there's so many great things they could show on that show. My favorite moment of the evening was towards the end when they did the film montage with that great piece of music. I forget what it is. And that speech from the King's speech.
Overlaying everything.
Overlaying that over these images, and I was like, oh my God, this is why I got into the movie business.
Yeah.
To me, it's not about filmmaking; it's about image making. There's images that just are so branded on our consciousness from films that we've loved over the years and stuff. And I don't know why they turn it into a crappy TV show.
But we watched.
Year.
But we all watched.
We watched, but we watched. I don't know.
We also knew
I take nothing away from James Franco and Anne Hathaway. That's a tough gig.
Yeah.
But when Billy Crystal came on, you were kind of like, well, why don't we get him back? It's like, 'cause he was funny.
There does seem to be nostalgia for that. I agree.
Yeah.
We are unfortunately out of time. We can't take one more, but maybe.
Good question.
Yeah. We're going to need to wrap it up here, I'm being told. So let's give Bill Paxton a hand. Wonderful to see him.